Ah, don't it feel so good to be on live for the first time in like forever? And Yo, what's up, guys? Welcome to a different episode of Chicago Bears Weekly. APW Sports signing in. This is the first time I went live on my channel in quite a while, and today's Bears episode is going to be a little different. I'm going to do a kind of mock draft, like a live mock draft of the Bears 2023 draft that is coming up this Thursday. And I want to give you guys a little bit of a reminder as before I go into this episode is that I will be streaming the entire first round of the NFL draft this Thursday night at 7:00 p.m. Central Standard Time on my channel. So make sure that you do not miss out on that. But before I get into this episode, it's not much to really talk about as far as Bears signings or anything like that. But one thing I do want to touch on just a tad bit of some of the offseason moves, like the Tremaine Edmunds, like the TJ Edwards of the world, guys like Travis Homer, Deontay Foreman, Nate Davis in the interior, the trade, of course, of the #1 overall pick. So far, I'm belief of the Bears this offseason is they are striding upward. We all knew at the point that the #1 overall pick was going to get traded anyway. So this didn't really come as a big surprise that they actually moved the #1 overall pick. I thought personally it was going to be either Indianapolis or maybe the Raiders that probably traded up, but it ended up being the Carolina Panthers, and the Bears got a lot out of that deal, including the number 11, the first next year, second, and the second year after that, and DJ Moore to throw in as a kicker. So the Bears this offseason, they're starting to move up. I don't think they're going to be this bad as they were in 2022 and 2023. Like I said, it's still going to be a wait and see of what they're going to do on draft night. So just before I get into this mock draft, if you guys are watching this, make sure you leave this video a like. That helps this goes up. And if you're watching this and you're not subbed to my YouTube, make sure you click the sub button and notification bell so you will not miss any of the things that I post on my channel. But just as a quick reminder, I will be live streaming the entire first round. I just hope it doesn't go 4 hours, but the entire first round, whether it's what are the Panthers going to do at #1? What do the Bears actually do at #9? Do they sit? Do they move back? What other teams are going to trade? Because there's always a surprise trade. Is Aaron Rodgers finally going to get moved to the New York Jets officially, either before or on draft night? We're still waiting to see if that happens. So there's a lot that's going to be getting into on draft night, and I will be live streaming it starting at 7:00 this Thursday. So make sure you guys tune in for that. But I'm going to let you guys sit to what we're here for, and that is going to be my draft of this year's Bears draft this Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. I'm doing all of the rounds of this draft. So without further ado, let's dive into it. All right. So I actually started on it just to make sure it works. Let's refresh this. All right. So we're going to do all 7 rounds Of course, we're going to pick the Bears, and I'm going to have it at a normal draft speed. But before I do that, I'm going to let you guys, I'm going to get into some of these comments. My boy Corey, we locked in. Let's go. I'm still thinking Peter Skoronski at 9, and I want to touch on that just a little bit later. But I can agree with that depending on what moves happen in this draft. And Corey says, we still need to solidify that offensive line. I don't think we should trade back again. Yeah, we can get quality players, but we can draft a high-end lineman and not a project. Now, that I totally agree with. I actually totally agree with that, as in I really think that the Bears don't need to trade back, as in to get a project lineman. They've been doing that for the past couple of years, whether it's been Leno, whether it's been Braxton Jones this year. I don't think the Bears need to get a quality lineman in late in the draft. They need to select high-end now. And my personal opinion, that's what I think they should do. But this is going to be a simulator, so we're going to see what happens there. But I totally agree. The Bears should not trade back. Shout out to my guy, Payo Time. He's a Rams fan. Now, I went on his channel and I streamed. He streamed the move as in optimism as in last season, and I said the Bears would have won 7 games heading into last year, and we all know how that turned out. Shout out to you, bro. Thoughts on the Bears D next year? I think it's going to be better with the acquisitions of Edwards and the acquisition of Tremaine Edmunds. Of course, you're going to get a healthy Eddie Jackson back, and you're going to get Jalen Johnson back healthy. I still think you can address a little bit as you're in your front four. The only major move that they made was DeMarcus Walker. So I think they should add a little bit more there. And I think it's probably going to come in this draft or probably some small free agent move. But I think the D is going to be better, especially with your linebacker play. I feel like all Bears fans talk about is Fields and the wide receivers, and I can honestly agree with that. A lot of Bears fans, that's really all they're coming down to is the wide receiver core and Fields. And rightfully so with Fields with the season that he had, especially running the football. And we all know he needed weapons, and they did that with getting DJ Moore. Chase Claypool is going to be acclimated into his second year, well, year and a half, because they got him last year during the season. So, that is kind of what all they talk about mainly, but I can see why. Even though Eberflus is a defensive coach. So after we get a better offensive lineman, we need to fix the defensive line. I absolutely agree, Corey. Philip Paulson, I hope I'm not butchering that right. Paul Misano. And he says both nines need attention. D-line was horrible. I honestly agree. Darnell Wright is a beast, plays nasty, will be right tackle plug right away. He's one of the draft prospects. And shout out to Payo Time. Yes, make sure you guys tackle that like button. But enough with the comments for the moment. Let's head right into this. I'm going to probably go normal speed so we can kind of see what all is going to transpire during this first round. So let's go into it. Of course, like I said, I picked the Bears. Now, let's go into this draft. Let's see what's going to happen. Bryce Young, C.J. Stroud, Will Anderson, Will Levis, Tyree Wilson, Anthony Richardson, Devon Witherspoon, and Paris Johnson Jr. are gone. So, as in we're simulating, we have a couple of draft trade offers, as in the Minnesota Vikings want to give us pick 23, Dalvin Cook, and a Minnesota second-round pick next year. Now, a trade like this, I personally don't think is going to happen because, number one, the Bears are in a position where they need to stay in line and select the lineman. The Bears are in a position where they can use his help in the trenches. And also, I really think that Dalvin Cook is going to come with a contract that the Bears are just not going to be willing to pay. So I'm going to reject that offer, and I'm going to move pick number 9 to pick 10. That could be something. If we get a second rounder back for Philly, we really don't give up nothing. We move one spot back. But it's interesting to see what Philly is probably going to take off the board. And I'm 9 times out of 10 is probably going to be Jalen Carter. And if Jalen Carter is on the board, I don't think the Bears are going to move back. And that's exactly who I think Philly will pick. So as much as it would make some sense to do, I am not going to accept this deal and trading within our own division for the Lions to move back up into the top 10. They've already selected Anthony Richardson in this mock draft, and they give us pick 48 and pick 18. That's also not going to happen. So let's reject that. So I'm going to pause the draft and get to you guys some of these comments. Excuse me. Naima Busul, shout out to you, one of the good loyal people that have been supporting me through this time. I can't see them taking a running back, even though David Montgomery is gone. Herbert should be the guy now and going forward. Now, that I actually totally agree with. Herbert is a guy that I think he's going to get a little bit elevated role, even though the signing of a Deontay Foreman is still going to be a running back by committee a little bit situation. So I do agree that they should not take a running back here. Phil says absolutely no way, and I agree with them. Corey says that trade definitely won't happen, nor do we need it. That is absolutely correct. So at the end of the day, I really believe that the Bears are actually going to stay at number 9, and this actually fits a perfect situation for them, as in Jalen Carter is still on the board. Broderick Jones out of Georgia, the left tackle, is still on the board, and Peter Skoronski is still on the board. Now, me personally, I also did a video about this, as in some of the prospects and who I actually think they should take. The guy that I actually think that they should take is Paris Johnson Jr., but obviously in this scenario, he is off the board. So, with this, I am going to have the Bears draft Jalen Carter at number 9. This is why I will say for Jalen Carter. Because at this point, the Bears need help in both trenches. We've already established that. Outside, inside, the Bears need help in both trenches. Now, you can get a potential number 1 overall talent in a guy like a Jalen Carter to slip a little bit down towards number 9. Now, I wouldn't have taken him that high if the Bears were to even stay at that number 9 overall selection. I personally wouldn't have had him go that high, mainly because of some of the, I'm not going to say durability issues, but I've watched him against Ohio State in that college football playoff championship game, the semifinals, and it seemed like he was off of the field more than he was on the field. Now, of course, I think in the NFL, he's going to start to get some nutrition. He's going to get some of that to really go a little bit. But I just think if Jalen Carter is there, there's no way that the Bears are going to pass him up. And that is why I have them taking Jalen Carter to help with that defensive front that was one of the worst that we've probably have ever seen in Bears history. They need help there. So why not take a guy like a Jalen Carter at that number 9 overall selection, especially if he falls. He's a first overall talent that dropped to 9. So, yeah, I will probably take that. So, we're going to go to the Bears' 53rd overall pick in the second round. Now, we have one trade offer, and that is for the Browns' 74th pick, and we get the pick 148. No, this is actually a lopsided trade. You're giving away 2 picks in this year's draft. You're only getting 1 back, and you're moving back. This is an offer that is not going to work. So we are going to reject that. And before I make this pick, let's get into some of these comments. Corey said he would have taken Broderick Jones or Jalen Carter. I can actually agree with that. He says Mozzie Smith will help with the line with Carter. Now, of course, he's a Michigan fan. I'm going to just say that now. It's a little bit of bias that's going on towards there. But honestly, I don't think the Bears are going to take 2 interior defensive linemen early in the draft, especially when you have an offensive line that is let's just face it, not the greatest still. Even though you've added Nate Davis, that was the only addition that you really had this offseason for the Bears. So I wouldn't have gone in that direction. And we're also going to say, I'm also worried about Carter as well. Talented there, but his body of work does worry me. I can a little bit agree with that. His body of work is a little bit worrisome. The talent is absolutely there. And when he's on his game, he's one of the more dominant interior left defensive tackles that we had in college football. So you're looking at possibly Carter with Mozzie Smith. Even though Mozzie Smith, he did have a solid career at Michigan, but it's still weird that I'm actually saying Michigan, the name, as an Ohio State fan. But I don't think that is a route that the Bears actually need to go at this point. To get two defensive interior tackles when you still need pass rush help and when you still need offensive line help, I don't think that is going to be the route that the Bears actually go with this pick. Then we're going to get to one more comments. Need right tackle. I can agree with that. They also need somebody in that interior, maybe the center spot. I can also see them going in that route with this pick. And he says not being biased, but at that pick, I'd take a tackle. Yeah, defensive tackle, we've already taken Jalen Carter in this scenario. We don't need to take another defensive tackle. Justin Jones, he's solid in that interior of the Bears' defensive front. I think if you were to go a defensive tackle, you probably get that later and get some depth in there. So I don't think that is a route that you would actually go. Now, I think with this pick, in my personal opinion, I think you draft offensive line. I really do. Because you can get a second-round talent. You can get somebody at that center spot, maybe a top Tipman out of Wisconsin, Whippler out of Ohio State, even though there's a little bit biased to bring him up. Get somebody at the guard position, but I don't think you can take a guard this high. I don't think the Bears' problem mainly is at guard, even though Tevin Jenkins has dealt with a little bit of an injury history. We still have Whitehair in the fold, too. So I think it's two spots that they could go here. They could go on the right tackle spot. They can go with the center spot. I personally think they're going to go center. I think they're going to go center to help with that interior of that offensive line because you're still going to need a very solid running game. Mustipher wasn't it. Lucas Patrick spent most of the year hurt. So if I was to pick at this pick, it would be between Whippler and it would be between Tipman. I don't think you go wide receiver now. I think the Bears wide receiving core is actually not bad with the addition of DJ Moore, with the addition. Well, the bringing back of St. Brown, and I don't know why they brought Dante Pettis back, but I think with Mooney, I think with Claypool, I think you maybe add that later. I don't think you go in the second round for that. So I think you're going to go one of the center spots with this interior of the Bears offensive line. I think you could go Tipman, and I think you could go Luke Whippler at this spot. I think Whippler you can get later in the rounds, but I think at this point you're going to draft for need. And Joe Tipman, I think, is going to fit the Bears out of Wisconsin to help with the interior of this offensive line. And the Bears have another pick at 61. So this is going to be a precarious spot. I probably didn't take any interior offensive lineman that's the best available at this point. You could have went Whippler. I think, well, I've watched Whippler a little bit more, of course, being biased towards Ohio State. I watched him a little bit more. So I'm more familiar with him than I am with Tipman, but Tipman has the higher grade, and I think he's going to be more of a guy that is going to plug and play with this Bears offensive line that needs a lot. And still, I think the tackle position is a route that they could go. And let's see where we get these trade offers. But before I go there, I'm going to go a little bit of his comments. And Corey says, as far as enter at that pick, Tipman is the best fit, which I actually agree. Get somebody at the interior of the Bears offensive line. So I really believe is what you're going to get. So we have two trade offers. It's the Browns wanting to move up again to give us pick 98. And I don't think the Bears are going to trade at this point. I don't think the Bears trade probably until later on in the rounds unless a deal really, really blows the doors off of them or blows them off the water. I don't think the Bears are going to actually draft or trade that late. So let's go to the next offer to see what it is. We get pick 70. and we give up 61 and 258 for pick 115. This could be a trade. That could be a scenario. That way, Bears get 61 and they get 64 right back to back. Or you can get 64 and then 70 back to back, but I don't think it's a move that they would do. You give up 258, which is later in the 7th round. And to be honest, I'm leaning towards accepting this trade, mainly because you get a higher pick in 158. And you only give it up 258, which is later in the rounds. Even though you can get some gems there, this is a trade that I'm probably going to accept here. And they take a safety. So none of the Bears prospects that you could have had at 61 are really off of the board at this point. So they weren't taking a safety. You got Jaquan Brisker in the 2nd round last year. You got Eddie back healthy. So I don't think you're going to go on the safety route. And if you do, you address that late. The Chiefs drafted Trey Palmer. I don't think they're going to go wide receiver, especially with some of the needs that they still have on their board. So I think a trade that, okay, you give up the 7th round pick 258, but you get a 115 pick and you only move back a couple of spots when you still having that 64th pick. So now we're going to have 2 trade offers, 264 and 67 for pick 218 and 139. I don't think the Bears move back again. I don't think I would move back again. And this is a trade that is a little bit lopsided. We don't need to get Jordan Lewis. Contract is coming up. Even though the Bears can use some depth at corner, I don't think this is a route that would go, especially moving out of 64 to move way back to 90. So I think we're going to reject both of those offers. And this is where I could probably see them addressing something on the defensive side of the ball, whether it's the edge, whether it's safety, which I don't think they will do now. You can address the offensive line again, but I don't think they would go that. They can go with the wide receiver route. But I always think, especially in a draft like this, that's not really big wide receiver heavy, even though you got Hyatt gone, you got Rashee Rice gone. You have a guy like Jackson Smith-Njigba gone, Cedric Tillman, Josh Downs. I'm looking to see who were the first round. Quentin Johnston is going to be off the board. Jordan Addison is gone. And then Smith-Njigba with the New England. So Trey Palmer. I don't think the Bears are going to go higher wide receiver, even though they can use more depth at that position. I personally think they're going to probably now go towards the defensive side of the ball. And I think you're going to get either Tui Pulotu, I'm butchering that name, or Dedrick Hall. Now let's read up a little bit on Tulu. He's a 1 technique to a wide 9. He's arguably between a 3 and a 7 technique. His questions about what his best overall fit is at the NFL level. But the bottom line is his tools allow him an impact from multiple spots. He has a quick first step. He's great accelerative, good foot speed, explosiveness, generator on the interior, but he has long enough track to burst tackles at the apex. Now, I think they're going to go edge here, so let's get a little bit of a report on Hall. Quick first step, closed burst when he's getting to the quarterback, and which is something the Bears need. High cut frame, long limbs, 6'2", 254. With this burst, I think this is probably going to be a route that they go at this pick. Now, let's see what other people are going to say. I'd make it. He said about the trade. They had to go the edge from USC, and that is exactly what I am going to do with this pick. I am going to select Tulu out of USC with this 64 pick to help with the Bears pass rush, which was, let's just face it, bad last year. So we have 2 trade offers for this pick as well. We have the 70, and we're only moving back 1 spot, and we have the 2024 Philly 6th overall. 6th round, excuse me. And this is actually a trade I could see myself doing. And Rashad Bateman, you get to pick 120. No. And for this, it could be a trade that I would accept. Would you guys accept that trade? I want to know before I do make a move on this trade. Tate Kramer says, hello, how you doing today? Thank you for joining the stream. Make sure you guys leave this a like. Make sure you guys leave this a like. Make sure you guys leave this a like. Smash the like button. I'm doing well. Getting through some things, but I'm doing well. Now let's see where we're going to go. I want to see what you guys have to say about this before I make a counter offer or I accept or I reject this particular trade. Now, me personally, I'm leaning towards accepting this because we're only going to move back, one spot? And we get a 6th-round pick of return. And I'm assuming they're probably going to move up to help a little bit on their offensive line, or they could use a running back at this point. Me personally, I am going to accept this. You're only moving one spot back. So we have 2 more trade offers for the 71st pick, and the Saints moved up to take defensive tackle Gervon Dexter out of Florida. So Bears don't really lose much with moving back that one spot. So with this one, we have pick 71 for pick 87, and we have pick 119. And let's see what the other trade offer is. Pick 90 for pick 218, and I'm not going to do neither one of these. So with this pick, and Tate Kramer says, I am a Cardinals fan. Who do you have going number 3? Personally, I think it's Will Anderson. I'm going to address that now, even though this is a Bears episode. I personally think if they get an offer, and I'm assuming it's probably going to be Tennessee that's probably going to move up the trade for a quarterback. And if they get an offer that's, I think that blows them away, I think you can see Arizona move down out of that spot. But I personally, with some of the needs that the Cardinals need on that football team, especially with losing J.J. Watt, with losing a guy like Chandler Jones, I think you get the pass rusher that you need to help solidify a lot of holes in your defense. Now, Buda Baker did just ask for a trade, so it's going to be a little bit of a interesting deal if they actually grant him that trade request. So the Cardinals still have a lot of things to work out before Thursday. I would just say that. So Corey says going back 1 pick, and he'll take a pick for next year. He would have took that trade. I took it as well. So with this 71st overall pick, the Bears can go wide receiver here now that they address some needs on the edge rush, and they've addressed the defensive line. And they've also, I think this could be a spot where you get an offensive lineman off the board. And I think this might be the route that they could go. I don't think you get a wide receiver now. And the Bears don't pick again until 103 in the 4th round. So I think at this point for the Bears, they have to get an offensive lineman now. You haven't been able to get one. Some of the ones that you were looking at were gone. Jalen Carter fell out of your lap. You get Tippmann. You get a guy like a edge rusher, Thule. I'm not going to try to keep butchering that name. So at this point, I think the Bears are probably going to now address the tackle position. I think at this point, they could stick with Borum, even though I think it's highly unlikely. Maybe a lot of that is due to a bit of his injury history as into why they're not actually going to keep Borum on the fold. But they could for maybe another year if the draft points out this way. They missed on some of those free agents like Orlando Brown Jr. They missed on a guy like a Mike McGlinchey who could have helped at the tackle spot. But I think they get tackle at this pick. And I think you get the best tackle available, which is Warren McClendon, 6'4", 306. He's quick off the snap. He's a very good run blocker. He's athletic. He's powerful. He's strong. And I just think he can impact this Bears offensive line right away, even though it's kind of getting into that project offensive line again. So I think this is the route that they go with this pick. They get that offensive tackle. So I really believe that you go this route. Now, I think you're going to start seeing the Bears dress some of the other things, maybe running back now. Maybe you can get a wide receiver now. Maybe you can address tight end, even though I don't think they will, with Tunyon and I almost said Jack Ertz. With Tunyon and Cole Kmet, Wook Whippler is gone. So they have the first pick in the third round. And I don't they get Wanye Morris. That name is actually funny. Wanye Morris. It's actually a funny name. If you guys know Boys to Men. It could go tight end, no. Wide receiver, they could get maybe a Jaden Reed to help. Running back, I think they could address that later. I think at this point, you can still stick on the defensive side of the ball. You could go corner here to probably address some depth issues with the Bears at their cornerback spot. And that might be a route that I think they can go. To help address the cornerback depth, you can get a Ronnie Hickman out of Ohio State. Yes, I'm a little biased, but I don't think they're going to go that route, even though I think Ronnie Hickman is a guy they can get. I think they go corner probably to address a little bit of that depth in this draft. I think you can help get some guys in there not Okay, so we had a little bit of an error here. Okay, we're back. A little bit of an error here. That's what happens with live streams. Sometimes you might get a little bit of an error, but we're back. But like I was saying, we can address a little bit of the Bears' corner depth. We can address a little bit of the running back depth. You're going to just, I think, fourth round picks, you're more addressing depth. You're not necessarily looking for a guy that can start right away, which I don't think the Bears need at this point. You're not looking for a guy that can really start right away, or if you can have him start, but is maybe in spot duty and spot situations. As we're looking, I'm personally looking at the cornerback spot now. You have a guy like Jalen Johnson and Kyler Gordon, Kendall Vildor, Jalen Jones, Blackwell. I think this could be a spot where you can address cornerback depth. I think this could be a spot where you can address the defensive line depth, even though you got Jalen Carter, you signed Andrew Billings. I couldn't remember whatever the sign it was. It's Andrew Billings, Donovan Jeter, which would be just depth. So I think you can still go edge here. Let me see what edge is on the board. You can still go edge here. You can still go tackle here. Or you can, there's a lot of routes that the Bears can go because they still need a lot on this roster. But if I was to address something, it might be wide receiver depth. Even though you have Claypool, you have Mooney, you have more. Economius St. Brown is more of a blocking wide receiver. And Dante Pettis, I still don't know why he signed him back. And you got Velus Jones Jr. So the Bears can go a lot of routes here. They get Homer, they have Epner at the running back position on their roster. So it's a lot of ways that you can go with this pick. And if I was to go with this somewhere in this draft, I probably would go defense. I would probably go defense to help address some depth needs, which could be depth at that linebacker position. And that is exactly what they need because Tremaine Edmunds is the only middle linebacker that you have on this roster. So I think you can go linebacker here to get some depth on your roster. The Bears do have another pick at 115. And I think you're going to get a linebacker here to address some depth. And that is where they're going to pick Owen Papoi out of Auburn. Chase Brown is off the board. Jaden Reed is also off the board. So the Bears at pick at 115. This is one of the picks we traded for as we received the 70th and 115 pick. So, with this, I think the Bears now can address some corner depth. They can address the running back room, probably get another guy in there, address the wide receiver room, and I think that's what they do. Nathaniel Dale fell a little bit. They could use some offensive line depth still, but this is where I probably see them getting a receiver off the board to help a little bit, and I think they are going to go a guy like Nathaniel Dale, who's a little bit smaller, so he's a little bit quicker, so I don't know. I could see them going wide receiver here. He's small. Let's see, Mingo, 6'1", 220. It's a lot of routes that they could go with this pick. And it's interesting to see what they are going to actually do. Now, you guys, make sure you leave some comments. Make sure you get yourself opinions heard of what I can do. What would you do in this mock draft? Make sure you leave your comments. They could go tight end. They could go tackle. They could address more tackle depth. They could address the interior depth. So, but as we look at it now, the Bears team needs, as they have it, is tackle, wide receiver, edge, guard, and defensive tackle, which I don't think they're going to do any of those just yet. Running backs are starting to get off the board now. But Zach Evans, looking at some prospects, I personally think out of all the players that they could take, they could probably, I think they could go wide receiver. I think they could go wide receiver. I think they're going to get themselves a bigger wide receiver, and I think this is where they're going to go. A guy like Mingo out of Ole Miss to help get some size in that wide receiver room and get somebody else who can catch the football. So the next Bears pick is until 133. And I think at this point, I wish it was a button to where you could see what actually you picked already. But you can't. So, yes, it is. Okay, so we have Jalen Carter, Joe Tipman, edge rusher Thule, I'm not going to keep butchering, McClendon, Papui, and Jonathan Mingo. I think they could probably use another interior presence, or I think they could draft another edge. And I think they could draft another edge, or they can get some depth at some other positions. Maybe your guard position could use a little bit more depth, especially with the position of Cody Whitehair. You could use your safety depth, which I think they can go safety and get some depth at that position. And I think you can, and I'm not being biased, I think he's the best safety on the board, and the Bears can use some depth at that position. And the Bears are picking right now at 133, and I think they're going to select Ronnie Hickman, safety out of Ohio State. So we have a trade offer. Colts move up 2 spots. We give up Philly's 6th round pick, and we get another 221 pick in this year's draft. And this is something I could take. I'm going to go through these a little bit more quick. I don't want this episode to be an hour at least. So this is something I can see myself doing. They get an Appalachian State, Nick Hampton. And let's see what the Bears are going to do here. I think they could address more depth at other positions. I think this is where they'll get the running back off the board. And Kenny McIntosh, I had a firsthand look at them. He's a very solid back. And some point, I think they're going to take a running back in this draft. And I think this is the point. Kenny McIntosh is a very solid running back. He's strong. He can get in between the tackles. He's 6 foot 204. He's very explosive. He can cut very well. And I've watched some of his film and his highlight tape, and he's a very solid player. So we're going to get Kenny McIntosh to help with this running back room. We are now in round 5. And the Bears have pick 148. And so just to recap, we have Jalen Carter, Joe Tipman, Thule, Warren, the help with the offensive line, linebacker Owen, Mingo at the wide receiver position, Hickman, and we also have Kenny McIntosh And I think personally they're probably going to draft another interior presence at that defensive front. Or I personally think they can use maybe some younger linebacker help, or they can use some help on that line. I think they're going to draft more depth at that offensive line spot, or you can get some help interior, which I think they could do. I don't think they're going to go safety again. I don't think they're going to go in the route of another wide receiver. So I think they're going to go probably get some help depth at those interior offensive line positions. Could be. So, and I think you get some more tackle depth with this Bears offensive line. So I think you're going to go Cool, who's 6'6", 309. Get some depth and draft your offensive line here. And Chicago Bears, shout out to you. Do you think we'll make it better than last season? With the moves that they made, of course, they're going to be better than 3 wins. Now, it's still wait to see what they actually do in the draft, but you're going to get more than 3 wins. With the moves that they made with their offense, with the moves that they made with some of the moves that they made on defense with Edwards and Edmunds, you're going to get more than 3 wins. The Bears are going to be better. Ahmad Cole, shout out to you. I think the Bears are going to go offensive line. He was talking about the pick. And the Bears, we don't draft another pick until round 7. So we're waiting on this draft process to go through. Now, if you guys have any questions, leave in the checks. I'd love to answer some of your questions. And once we get to the next Bears pick, I will give you guys a recap of where we're at so far. So we have 2 picks in round 7, and that will conclude the Bears mock draft. So far in this draft, we've taken Jalen Carter, number 9. We've taken Joe Tippmann, number 53. Thule at edge rusher that can help at 64. We made a trade for 71st overall to take Warren McClendon out of Georgia. We take Owen Pepoi. I'm 9 times out of 10, I'm probably butchering that name. A linebacker at Auburn to help with some depth in that linebacker position, because as he listed the depth chart, Tremaine Edmunds the only middle linebacker listed, even though I think Sanborn is going to play outside. We drafted Ronnie Hickman to help with some depth at that safety spot. Kenny McIntosh, a very solid running back, to help with some depth at the running back room. They got Deontay Foreman cheaper. They have Khalil Herbert, who I think is a very solid back. Kenny McIntosh can do a lot of things as well. So you have him. You have John Ojukwu to help with the tackle spot, probably with some depth there as well, especially with Braxton Jones being the only listed tackle at that left tackle spot. With Tevin Jenkins, probably, I think he's going to move back at to right tackle. So he says, how do you think this draft will go? I don't think it's going to go exactly how I have it now. I think at some point, I do think Jalen Carter is probably going to fall into the Bears, and I think if the Bears are still there at 9 and Jalen Carter falls, there's no way they're going to not take him. But I personally would take an offensive lineman here, especially with some of the needs that the Bears have. But I could easily see them going Jalen Carter, and I wouldn't be mad at it. The only thing I would be mad at if the Bears was to actually do in real draft life, I would be extremely upset if they were to draft a guy like Bijan Robinson, number 9. That is the only thing I would be mad about. If the Bears were actually to do such a thing, is to draft Bijan at number 9, that would not be a good move, especially to get a running back that high when you can address the trenches with offensive, defensive line, which is your struggle, especially on the defensive side. So if the Bears were to go Bijan Robinson, I think that would be a huge mistake. And personally, I don't think the Bears are going to do such a thing. So just to recap the trades, we've got the Philly 6th-round pick next year, and the Saints moved up 1 spot to select Javon Dexter, and we got the 71st pick. We traded back to 61 to 70, and we received pick 258 and pick 115. In another trade, we received pick 138, moved back 2 spots, pick 221 to give up Philly 6 next year. So we have 2 more picks. And at this point, we are going to take, I think they're going to probably get somebody in the quarterback room, maybe, even though I don't think so. You can address wide receiver, get some depth in there as well. You can address the interior, get some depth in there as well. You can address some defensive interior linemen, which I think they could go. And I think he's the best defensive tackle on the board, just to address some depth in the room, just to keep the rotations fresh. And we all know a good, fresh defensive line is a really thing to go. And shout out to New England Patriots. I really hope y'all can go far. Shout out to you. Appreciate that. I hope they do. I don't think it's going to be this year in 2023, if we want to be honest. And I'll get into that more in episodes down the road. And we have to see what they do with this draft as well. But I think that this is a year that the Bears could be in a position, if things go right, that they could potentially fight for a playoff spot. And everything has to go right. You have the Vikings in the division, who I think of the cream of the crop. We don't know what Green Bay is going to be, especially if the Aaron Rodgers trade ends up not happening. So we really don't know. Maybe 30. I know who this is. Maybe 30-35. Yeah, real funny. Yeah, real funny. Where was I at? The Lions are a team that is up on a rise. So I think you're still in a competitive division. Each team, even though I think Green Bay is probably going to take maybe a small step back from where they were in years with Aaron Rodgers, especially if this trade ends up happening, which I actually predict it might happen on draft night. But I think the Bears are still 2023, 2024 will be the year. I think they start to be legit playoff contenders, but I think they improve a lot this year. They're still going to – I think this is a step in the right direction, but I've always thought that they have more than one offseason away from being consistent contenders. But we're going to make this last pick so we can get this out of the way so I can answer more of you guys' questions. And you guys can chime in a little bit more. And they're going to go all players. And let's see what we've drafted. To give you a recap, I don't think they're going to draft double running backs. They drafted double tackles. They drafted double on the offensive line. I think you're probably going to go, maybe you get an extra wide receiver. Maybe you get an extra tight end here. But I personally, you can see them taking just a small round quarterback. And I think they will, even though it's not the smartest thing, they're probably going to take a late round quarterback just to add somebody in that room. So we're at the point where the Bears draft is now over. Now we're going to skim through the rest of this. And again, we're going to look and see what we've done with this Bears mock draft. I really wish you could speed this up. I wish they had a speed to where you can pick faster as the thing goes along. But if you guys are still in, leave your questions. I'll make the end section as question answering. So we're finalizing the draft. And so this is what the Bears did. Let me download this so I can post this on my social medias. So with this Bears draft, we have Jalen Carter at number 9, which I think that is a legit possibility. Joe Tippmann to help with the center spot, which I think is a legit possibility, especially with the Bears interior front not really being solidified. And you only having Lucas Patrick, who dealt with a lot of injuries. They did draft Doug Kramer. And you only have Cody Whitehair, who can also be a switch out to be replacement for Sam Lustifer. You have Leatherwood on your offensive line. So I think it's an adjustments to be done, in my personal opinion. But as you look at the rest of this draft, we got Tully to help with the edge. We have Warren McClendon to help with the tackle spots with the Bears offensive line. We have Owen to help with the linebacker depth. Mingo to help with some wide receivers in the room, even though I still don't believe why they brought back Dante Pettis. Maybe for the punt returner, because him as a wide receiver has been lackluster, to say the least, during his career. So We have Ronnie Hickman at Ohio State to help with some safety depth. And I'm going to be honest with you guys. This is just a homer pick. Me as an Ohio State fan to get at least one Buckeye in the room, another one besides Fields. We have Kenny McIntosh to help with the running back position, John Ojukwu to help with this offensive line. We also have Jalen Redmond at that defensive tackle spot, and they get a late-round cornerback in Hayner to help compete in that quarterback room. So, as we look at this Bears draft, I'm probably going to go maybe another 5 minutes before I end it. And let's switch back to here just so I can give you guys some talk. Just to give you guys some thoughts on what I think the Bears are going to actually do. The Jalen Carter trade, or not trade, but the Jalen Carter selection, I think, is a very legit possibility, especially with the off-the-field thing that happened with him with the reckless driving thing and some of the teams that have moved to get quarterbacks, or the way that this offseason has been at the quarterback position. You have the Panthers. I think that person going to take C.J. Stroud. You have Houston, who's going to take whoever's available. In my opinion, is going to be Bryce Young. You have the Cardinals at 3. I can see them moving back and probably with Tennessee maybe and get Tennessee a quarterback. But Tennessee did draft Malik Willis last year, so they could probably have some hope in him and have him on their roster, but I don't think Malik Willis is a guy that is going to fit for them. I still think Tannehill can be the starter, and they can move up to 3 to get a guy like Richardson, and he doesn't have the pressure to start right away. And then you're looking at the 4th overall selection, and you're looking at the Indianapolis Colts. They could possibly move up. I think they could possibly move up a spot, even though I don't think they will. And if it sits right for them where they still have a guy like Will Levis on the board, or even if the Cardinals end up taking Will Anderson, that could happen. So I personally think Jalen Carter is a guy that could potentially drop. I don't think he gets past some team. Me personally, if you want to look, okay, so what happened is Bryce Young went to the 1st overall pick in this particular mock draft. Let me show you guys on the screen. Let me move this comment out of the way. 2024, that part. Funny. Bryce Young, quarterback. I think it's going to be switched between these two. Will Anderson 3. Will Levis 4, even though I think he's a better fit with Indy. Will Levis, I think it's going to fit better with Indy. I think Anthony Richardson needs to go to a team that can develop him. He needs to go to a team that can develop him. I don't think he has the talent and potential to be there, but I don't think he has it right away as to where he can go in and start right away. But he has the potential, and I think quarterback is a position where you could draft on potential if you move up or do something like that. Shout out to Chicago Bears with the Super Sticker 99. I can't see what the comment is. Shout out to you. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for the donation. Really appreciate you guys. Shout out to Torian Winfield. Bear down. Let's go. And so we have this potential mock draft that it have Anthony Richardson going to the Lions, even though I think, personally, I can see the Lions drafting Jalen Carter to help with the interior of their defense. And that defense wasn't really necessarily stout. Aiden Hutchinson, had a very good rookie year, and you could have argued him as defensive rookie of the year. They had the Raiders taking Devon Witherspoon, which I think Christian Gonzalez is personally, in my opinion, a better corner. So I can see them taking either corner spot because I think that was the weakest part of the Raiders last year was that cornerback spot. The Falcons, they can pick between Skoronski or Paris Johnson Jr. I think they could possibly go Paris Johnson Jr. I think this was probably a hit-on pick. Even though I would love, if you guys know, I would love to see another Buckeye in a Bear uniform. Let's just be real. I would love to see Paris Johnson Jr. as a potential Bear. But I think if Paris Johnson Jr. is off the board and Jalen Carter is off the board, this could be a spot where you see probably a Broderick Jones go. You could see Peter Skoronski possibly at that pick towards the Bears. I think with this pick, you're going to go in the trenches. You must go in the trenches. As much as I would love Jackson Smith and Jibbers to help with that wide receiver room, the Bears have too many issues with the trenches to not fix them with that 9 pick. They have too many issues in the trenches. We've seen last year the Bears could not generate pressure. They could not stop the run. And that is a bounce out of your defense. Now, if we look at let me just go back into this regular view so I can. If we go back as to some of the defenses that a guy like Matt Eberflus had in Indy, you had DeForest Buckner up front. You had the linebackers of a guy like Shaquille Darius Leonard. You had Kenny Moore. You had Xavier Rhodes for some part of that defense. So Kenny Moore Jr. in the corners. You had people at those positions, especially up front. You had Yannick Ngakoue for a brief period with that Colts defense. So I think you have to address some. I don't think the edge is going to be there at them at 9. Will Anderson and also Tyree Wilson will be off the board. You have to have complementary pieces in your defense. You have to have a good interior presence on your defense. So the Jalen Carter pick makes a lot of sense. And if you go offensively, a guy like a Skoronski, a guy like a Paris Johnson Jr., or Broderick Jones makes a lot of sense for the Bears to take at 9 to help with their trenches. They need absolute help with their trenches. Complete help. Now, of course, I'm going to recap what I've done, and I think they're going to conclude the episode after that. Jalen Carter, Joe Tippmann to help with the center spot. Thule at the edge to help get some depth there and help get some edge rush presence. You get another tackle in Warren McClendon out of Georgia. You get Owen at the linebacker spot from Auburn to help with some depth in your linebacker room. Jonathan Mingo to help address some depth for Rob Receiver to get another pass catcher in the building. Ronnie Hickman out of Ohio State. You get some safety depth, and this is a little bit of a homer pick for me. I'm not going to lie, but I've watched Ronnie Hickman. He can fly around and he can get to the football. You get Kenny McIntosh to help with your running back spot. And let me switch the screen again. I'm sorry about that, guys. You get John Ojokwu at that running offensive tackle spot. Jalen Redmond to help with some interior presence and some interior depth. And the Bears have a habit sometimes of getting a late round quarterback, and they could get a late round quarterback, even though I don't think they will. They could do so. But, hey, that's my mock draft. That is going to conclude. I'm laughing because I know exactly who this is. The Oscars jackass. I know this person personally. That's why I'm laughing. But that is going to conclude this episode, Season 6, Episode 8 of Chicago Bears Weekly. Thank you guys for tuning in. If you've gotten to this part, make sure you smack that like button and subscribe to the channel. I am going to remind you guys again before I sign out, I am going to live stream the entire first round of this year's draft this Thursday night at 7:00 p.m. Central Standard Time. So make sure you guys tune in for that. But that is going to conclude this week's episode of Bears Weekly. APW Sports signing out. Make sure you guys stay safe out there. Have a great and excellent day. And I will catch you guys Thursday. Peace.